H1N1 response. Also a practicing physician, Dr. Kavita Patel, plus former Republican strategist Steve Schmitzbach and Nick Confessori, political reporter for the New York Times. Dr. Patel, let me start with you. Take me through not just how we got here on the test, but how we fix it.
Sure. So the reason we're here is that for months, even though data were coming out of China fairly early, that we would need some form of testing. It wasn't if, it was when. The Food and Drug Administration really did not mobilize the ability to kind of authorize all these private labs that were clamoring to actually get authorization, regulation, and testing up to speed, which is why you're seeing such a delay. And now that we're here, we just have to deal with it. We think, by the way, even the CDC is not able to kind of provide the most accurate estimates of what each of the private labs, and we're not talking about obscure labs, Nicole, we're talking about, Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, Stanford. Even the CDC is not accurately monitoring the capacity of the lab testing. So now that we're here, we need, as we're talking to Congress about a stimulus package, we need to send a clear signal. There's a lack of faith in this White House, no surprise. We now need to rely on people like the governor that you had talked about, people like mayors, to actually say, we're going to work together to make sure that we have testing available. And honestly, Nicole, the worst case in all of this, I'm a practicing doctor, doctors are being told different things. The guidance to actual doctors is so far behind the times. We are missing the boat if we're talking about trying to only kind of test people that have contact from out of country. We really need to think creatively, including not just drive-through testing, which you saw the Biden campaign rolling out today. We need to also start thinking about how we can get this test to scale for self-testing while you're quarantined in your home. And that's the way we're going to fix it.
I read an interview with the World Health Organization, doctor, about how China turned things around and bent the curve there to slow the spread and slow new infections. I think they were testing like every 2 hours. I mean, that's enough tests to test quarantined people and anyone they've been in contact with almost hourly. How do we not have enough tests to test everyone in a community that may have come in contact with someone else who's infected?
No, you're asking all the right questions, and I'm glad the media is continuing to put some pressure on this. Again, because the government, which has to regulate these labs, because they have been so far behind, I talked to two kind of heads of labs in very prominent universities that said, we have been ready. Once we get the approval from the government, we can start testing people and have results in an hour, and we can test up to 1,000 people in a day. So to your point, we are starting to ramp this capacity up, but not because of the federal government and their support, it's in spite of it. And I think that's the tragedy of all of us.
Dr. Patel, since we've been on the air, Disneyland in Southern California has closed. March Madness has been canceled altogether. They were going to proceed without spectators. It's now been canceled. And I think whether you were planning to go to Disneyland or March Madness, that's not the point. The point is that people are terrified. What kinds of calls are you getting from patients, and what kind of practical information can you give to people that are scared?
Yeah, and by the way, most of the calls I'm getting are from physicians who are scared because they are being asked to do their jobs with very little protection themselves. And so patients, including healthcare workers, are asking, what can we do? And I'll just give you very practical advice. I mean, you've heard about hand washing, you've heard about why we need to do that. But I think if you're in an age group, 60 or older, and maybe even 50 or older, start thinking about kind of what we call social distancing. And that practically means reconsider going into large groups, be very thoughtful about what you need to do, and let's really think about people who don't have an option for telework and how can we facilitate for them to be safe. And then the other thing, Nicole, is that if you really feel like you have been at risk, advocate for yourself to be tested and make it very clear that this is not something that's optional, that you really need to consider the health of yourself and the people around you.